Hello everyone. Today I continue my development. So I have been working on a PHP package called Laravel Web3 storage. What I'm going to do today is a kind of code refactor, a live coding. Let me show you the problem I'm having now. I'm using the Illuminate HTTP Facade to handle the API call. Everything works well. Unless in the unit test, I realize to cover the features with HTTP Facade, I have to bootstrap the application in order to use the HTTP fake method function. So it's kind of complicated, get things complicated. So I try to get rid of this dependency. My plan is to use a Guzzle client, which is also a very popular PHP HTTP client. So let me start. First step is to install the Guzzle client. So composer require. You can also look into the official documentation, the installation guide. This is how we can install it. As we installed, let's start a code refactor. So the API, so this is the package project Laravel Web3 storage. This is the class where the API call is actually made. Now I'm going to firstly add a private variable called Guzzle client. This variable will be used by the following functions. Next thing is I'm going to add a constructor. Here I want to pass in a Guzzle client instance. Let's look into the documentation. So firstly we need to use a client. So this is what we need to do. We need to use a client. Here we expect a client instance. We accept now. So this is the default value of the client, which means you don't have to pass. But if it's not null, it will be used. Guzzle client else this Guzzle client will be assigned with a new client. Okay, now we have the client, we can use it now. In the following functions, we will use this client to make the HTTP API call. So this is the get list, which is going to make the get request. So look into the documentation, it's pretty straightforward. Making a request section, let's see how to make a request. We copy this part. Firstly, we need to use request class. Copy paste here. This is the request class and the usage. Now let's paste here in the get list. It's get request. The endpoint is this. The third thing is the receipt headers. This is where we put the authorization header setting. Okay, instead of client, it's this Guzzle client send request. We don't need any option, just default. Now we get response object. As we get the response object, we can get rid of the old code. Okay, the next thing is to get a status from response object. We use get status code. So this is also part of the Guzzle client. Get status. Okay. is it not equal to 200 exception? No. Okay, here response, how we can get an associative array of the JSON response. We need to use the JSON decode, as we can only get the string representation from the response object. True means we need the associative array. Now we have done the code change for getList function. Similarly, let's apply the change to getStatus function. It's also a GET request, just different endpoint. You see, endpoint. Now we can get rid of this part, and the status is from response object get status code. Okay, response is from here. We can also copy paste this part. I will do the code refactor after the video to make it much cleaner, but for now let's just make it work. Okay, done for getStatus. The last thing is upload. This is post request. So let's look into documentation, making request, look into now the making a request, uploading data part, scroll down, sending form files. So this is what we are going to use. See, send post request with multi-part request body. We need to set the file content and the file name. That's it. So upload, copy, paste. This Guzzle client, send the post request, the endpoint options, endpoint is here. Upload. Okay. Name. Remember, we need the name as file in the multi-part. This is required by Web3 storage API. Content. File content. And file name. So this name is parameter name. This parameter called file name. This is to set the file name, which is passed as parameter to the function as well. You see here the file name. Okay, get rid of the rest of the multi-part, which is not required. And the headers. So this is how we set headers, as we also need authorization header. Copy, paste. Okay, remember, so when we set headers for a post request, we can put here. This is a part of the options, which is a third parameter. See here, options, multi-part, and headers. Okay. Now we also rename the response variable to our response object. In the following code, we get the status code from the response object by get status code function. Next thing is to pass response, similar as this line. So how we get response, associative array of the JSON, something like this. Now we have done the code change in the package, so I can move the dependency to the HTTP facade. Next thing is to go to the Laravel application. Now you can see here in the composer JSON, I have configured a local repository pointing to the Laravel Web3 storage project. So every change I made in this project will be reflected in this Laravel application. I just need to use composer install to refresh the package and rediscover the package and service provider. So this is how we can debug locally. Now everything is ready for end-to-end testing. Let me come back to the dashboard and try to upload some file. I say this guy, rename sample 789, open. So see here, there are 6 images. When I upload, it might take some time. We might also need to debug. You see the page refreshed, actually it's still loading as the image is being loaded from some IPFS gateway. It's not fast enough, so it might take some time to load the image, but anyway, the file has been successfully uploaded to IPFS network. I also received the CID from response. Okay, so on end-to-end, I can say the code change or the refactor works very well. So this is the package development I have just said. So the problem is in the unit test. So let's see how we can test the code change with the Guzzle HTTP client dependency. I have already created a very simple test case here just to test the get status code. The expectation is that I will mock the API call and let it respond with 429, which means too many requests. In this case, I want to see the status code in this API exception is same as 429. Okay, let's come back to the documentation, see the testing Guzzle client. What we need to do is that we can use mock. Now let's go back to the code base and paste here mock. We also need to paste this thing. We need to use these classes. Okay. Response 429. We can keep these parameters. We don't actually need, but we can keep it for now. It doesn't matter. Okay, this is a mock. Next thing is we need to create the handler stack and pass it to the client constructor. So this is where we can have the test client or mock client. Now we copy paste here client. We need the client. Let's see here proxy, we are using the client, right? Yes. In the test, let's paste the client here. It looks we're not using the request and the request exception, so skip. Okay, now we can use the client to make the request. So we are going to start the test. Actually, this is something we should put not here. We should not put it here. Instead, move it to proxy test. I just realized. So you see here, this is what I was working on. So to try to mock the HTTP facade. Okay, and replace. Okay, and move all these uses to this test case. Now I can remove the HTTP facade usage client new API client proxy, it accepts a client instance. Now it gets list, right? Ideally, here when we are making a function call to get list, when we send request, here we should expect status code 429. Okay, now let's run the test case. How to run it? We use a vendor PHP unit. PHP unit. It's in vendor bin PHP unit. Okay, there's one failure, get too many. So fail asserting expectation type client much expected. So actually it's sending client exception. So it's not API exception. So we need to see why. So this is how we can test. And so it means here when we send request, so get dot internal response hello world. So it's here. Let's see how we can fix it. It's the 34.934. So here, send request to a throw exception. And you see so this is how we should handle exception. We need to see. Haven't used much before, so not sure how we can. So client HTTP client exception. You can see here. I like to handle error, but not a body. How agree responded. When you get here, so you can see here. This is how we can handle the negative response. So anyway, we can see the exception, so we can get a response. So we need to use the try catch to handle the negative HTTP response, which to me seems not very ideal. But anyway, let's do it as we are using this dependency. Okay, now we say response object no. Okay, let's try this request, try send catch. What exception should we catch? Request. We need to use this exception. Let's see this guy. Okay, exception. This is what we are going to use. And now here, let's climb exception. Okay. Now this is how we can get response. Okay. Okay, send response object. Right. And move this part here. Let's do this. Response object get to this code. Then we don't need to determine it's always negative response here. And get rid of this part. Now I think we will be able to get the stated code out of the negative response. Now you can see it passed. So this is how we can handle the negative response when we are using the Guzzle HTTP client. For non-200, I think for non-200 or 201 or 1302 such response, especially in this case when Web3 storage API responds with 429 too many request response. Exception will be thrown by the send function. So this is how we should handle the negative response. I will also apply the same code to the rest of the functions. But for now, I think you can see I have used the test case to cover the too many request scenario in Web3 storage API. Okay, I think that's it for today. So go through what I have done. I switch from Illuminate HTTP Facade to Guzzle HTTP client to make the API calls to Web3 storage. I also added test case to cover the basic function in the API client proxy. So especially to be specific is to cover the 429 status code from the Web3 storage API. Okay. I think that's it for today. I'm going to submit the code to my repository and release a new version, say v0.0.2, after I complete the code change in the rest of the proxy functions. Okay, I think that's it for today. If you feel it's useful, feel free to thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks. See you next time. Bye bye.